Nathan thought his marriage to Samantha was unshakable, built on years of trust, love, and family. But when a single text message exposes her affair, his world crumbles. Fueled by betrayal, Nathan plans his revenge, meticulously gathering evidence and confronting Samantha with the truth. As their carefully constructed lives unravel, a darker reality surfaces. Samantha's guilt runs deeper than Nathan could ever predict, and his quest for justice leads to consequences neither of them can escape. In this gripping tale of love, loss, and unintended tragedy, revenge proves far more destructive than the betrayal that sparked it. The morning started like any other, filled with routine, noise, and the small comforts of normalcy that come before your life implodes. I poured coffee into a mug as Samantha, my wife, buzzed around the kitchen, multitasking with the efficiency of someone who has done this dance 1,000 times before. She was dressed for work in her crisp blouse and tailored pants, her blonde hair perfectly straightened, the picture of competence and charm. "Don't forget Emma's recital on Friday," she said without looking up from her phone. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, sipping my coffee. The morning sun streamed through the window, and everything seemed fine. It's funny how betrayal doesn't announce itself with a crash or a roar but instead slips quietly through the cracks of your life. The phone buzzed on the counter, and I barely glanced at it. Samantha had never been careless before, never left her phone in plain sight like that. But this morning, the universe decided to show its hand. I didn't mean to look. I didn't want to. Yet, there it was, glowing innocently with a notification. "Matt, can't wait to see you this weekend, babe. Hotels booked." The words felt like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. My hand froze around the coffee mug. For a moment, I wondered if I had read it wrong, but the message lingered on the screen like a wound that wouldn't close. "Something wrong?" Samantha's voice broke my trance. I snapped my head up to see her watching me from across the room. Her expression was calm, neutral, even. She was good at that. Too good. I forced a smile, trying to steady my racing heart. "No, just spaced out for a second." Her eyes lingered on me for a moment, but she seemed satisfied with my answer. She grabbed her phone, swiped the screen, and shoved it into her bag. "I've got a meeting this morning, so I'll be home late. Love you." She kissed my cheek and hurried out the door, leaving a trail of perfume and deceit in her wake. When the door shut behind her, I collapsed into the nearest chair, the silence of the house deafening. The first thing I did was tell myself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was harmless, a misunderstanding. But the pit in my stomach refused to settle. I picked up my phone and did something I never thought I'd do. I opened the family's shared phone bill online. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but when I found it, I wished I hadn't. Matt's number. Over and over. Calls at odd hours, sometimes late at night. Texts every day. I scrolled through weeks of data, watching the proof of my wife's affair stack up like bricks on my chest. The last call was just 2 nights ago, around midnight, while I was asleep, dreaming of a life that no longer existed. I stood up abruptly, knocking my coffee onto the floor. I didn't even care. Anger simmered beneath my skin, but so did something colder, something sharper. Samantha thought she was clever. She thought she could hide this from me. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I needed more. The week crawled by, each day heavy with suspicion and secrets. I started paying closer attention, and once I did, the cracks in her stories were impossible to miss. Samantha had always been meticulous with her schedule, work, gym, occasional drinks with friends, but now, I could see the gaps. The unexplained absences. The late nights with flimsy excuses. One evening, she sat across from me at the dinner table, scrolling through her phone with a faint smile on her lips. "Something funny?" I asked, my voice deceptively light. She looked up, startled, as though she'd forgotten I was there. "Oh, just a meme from one of the girls at work." I forced a chuckle, though the sound felt foreign in my throat. Share it with me. Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she tilted her phone away from me. It's stupid. You wouldn't get it. Maybe once, I would have let it slide. But now. That slight shift in her expression was all I needed to confirm what I already knew: she was lying to me. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. I think I'll take the trash out. Okay, she said absently, already back to whatever was on her screen. Outside, in the cool darkness of our backyard, I leaned against the fence and stared at the house, the windows glowing warmly, the silhouette of my wife moving through the kitchen. I'd built this life brick by brick, believing it was solid, unshakable. Yet, here I was, watching it fracture before my eyes. I didn't know how long I stood there, but eventually, I pulled my phone from my pocket. I typed in a name I hadn't thought of in years: David Keenan. David was a private investigator I'd met years ago through a friend. I had no idea if he'd even remember me, but when he picked up on the second ring, I knew I'd made the right call. David, it's Nathan. I need a favor. By Thursday evening, David had already sent me what I needed. Samantha wasn't just cheating on me, she was bold about it. Brazen. She and Matt had been meeting at a boutique hotel in the next town over every few weeks, and she was planning another visit this weekend. The photos were damning: Samantha arriving at the hotel, Matt pulling up minutes later, the two of them walking inside together. I stared at the pictures for hours, memorizing every detail. The way she smiled at him. The way he touched her back as they entered the lobby. My stomach churned, my hands trembling with rage and something else, something harder to name. The man in those photos wasn't the woman I married. Or maybe I'd just never known her at all. When I finally stood up, my plan came together in an instant, as clear and precise as a blueprint. Samantha wanted to play games. Fine. I'd play too. Only this time, I'd make sure she lost. On Friday morning, Samantha was chipper as ever, packing her small duffel bag for her girls' weekend. She kissed me goodbye, her smile bright and carefree. Don't work too hard while I'm gone. I'll try not to, I said, matching her tone perfectly. I watched her pull out of the driveway, her taillights disappearing down the road. The moment she was out of sight, I grabbed my keys and jacket. My car was parked a few houses down so she wouldn't see me tailing her. I knew exactly where she was going, and I was going to follow her every step of the way. As I drove, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger was still there, but it was controlled now, focused. Samantha thought she had this all figured out, but she had no idea what was coming. When I arrived at the hotel, I parked far enough away to avoid being seen. Sure enough, Samantha's car was already in the lot, parked neatly next to Matt's. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of the two cars side by side, a fitting image, really. For the next hour, I sat in my car and waited, the weight of what I was doing pressing against me like a vice. This wasn't the life I had imagined for myself. I never wanted to be the guy parked outside a hotel, spying on his wife. But here I was, and there was no turning back now. Eventually, I put the car in drive and pulled away, already preparing for what would come next. Samantha thought she had won, but she'd underestimated me. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. By the time Samantha returned home on Sunday evening, I was ready. Ready in ways she would never see coming. I had spent the weekend tying up loose ends, ensuring every piece of the puzzle was in place. Every screenshot, every photo, every email, collected, catalogued, and time-stamped. My lawyer had already drafted a divorce petition, prepped with everything I needed to make sure this ended in my favor. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to obliterate the version of herself she had so carefully constructed. But I wasn't going to rush it. Not yet. I wanted to see her squirm, watch her play pretend, knowing her facade would soon crumble into ash. When the front door opened, I was sitting in the living room, a glass of bourbon in hand, the TV muted. Samantha entered with a smile that made my skin crawl. She carried her duffel bag like it was nothing, no guilt, no shame, just another weekend of fun with her friends. "Hey, babe," she chirped, kicking off her shoes by the door. "Kids in bed already?" "Yeah. They were wiped after playing outside all day." She wandered into the room, her face glowing from what I could only assume was Matt's touch. I clenched my jaw to stop myself from saying something I'd regret. Her expression softened when she noticed the glass in my hand. "Everything okay? You don't usually drink bourbon unless something's bothering you." Her concern, fake as it was, sent a wave of anger through me, but I kept my expression calm. I turned the glass in my hand and took a slow sip before answering. "Just a long weekend. Work stuff." "Ah." She walked over and kissed the top of my head like I was a damn puppy. "I missed you." I bit back a laugh. She missed me. The gall of it. "How was your weekend?" I asked, my voice steady. Her eyes lit up as though I'd just handed her an award. "Oh, it was great. The girls and I stayed up way too late, talked about everything under the sun. You know how it is." I nodded. "Yeah, I bet." Samantha flopped onto the couch, scrolling her phone. It disgusted me how easily she slipped back into our life, like she hadn't just spent 2 days lying in bed with another man. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, memorizing the way she acted so normal, so unbothered. I stayed quiet that night, silently observing, while Samantha talked about nothing, her weekend, work, upcoming plans with the kids. I gave nothing away, knowing the time to strike would come soon enough. Monday morning came, and Samantha slipped back into her routine effortlessly, leaving for work with the same kiss and smile as always. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I got to work. I started by sending an email to Matt's wife. David, my PI, had been thorough. Matt was married, of course he was. I had her email and enough information about her to confirm that I wasn't some lunatic spouting lies. My email was short, concise, and packed with the proof she would need. Subject: You deserve to know. Hi, Michelle. I'm sorry to reach out to you like this, but I feel you deserve the truth. My wife, Samantha, and your husband, Matt, have been having an affair for several months. Attached, you'll find photos, messages, and receipts that confirm this. I wanted you to hear it from someone who understands the betrayal. I'm sorry this is happening to you. If you'd like to talk, I'm here. Nathan. I stared at the screen for a full minute before hitting send. My hand trembled, but I couldn't stop myself from feeling a grim satisfaction as the message disappeared into cyberspace. By lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a new email. It was Michelle. Nathan, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Thank you for telling me. I had my suspicions, but seeing the proof. I'm devastated. Please let me know how I can help you. They can't get away with this. The email was followed by her phone number. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. Samantha and Matt weren't just going to deal with me, they were about to face the storm of 2 betrayed spouses. That evening, Samantha came home late. She gave me a kiss as she walked in, her lips soft and sweet like nothing had changed. She probably thought she had gotten away with it all. I watched her move through the kitchen as she made dinner. How was work? I asked casually. Oh, busy as always, she said with a smile. What about you? It was productive. I stirred my drink absently, thinking about the email I'd sent, the conversation I'd had with Michelle on the phone. Productive didn't even begin to describe it. I'm glad to hear that, Samantha said, setting a plate of pasta down in front of me. So, do you want to watch a movie tonight? I looked up at her, a ghost of a smile on my lips. Sure, Sam. Sounds perfect. She smiled brightly, completely unaware that her world was already crumbling beneath her feet. The fallout began on Wednesday. Samantha was in the shower when her phone started buzzing on the bathroom counter. I glanced at the screen. It was Matt. Perfect. I grabbed her phone and swiped to answer, holding it to my ear just as the water shut off. Nate? What the hell are you doing with Sam's phone? The sound of Matt's voice, arrogant, smug, set my teeth on edge. I glanced toward the bathroom door. The water had stopped, but Samantha hadn't come out yet. Matt, I said evenly, you might want to call your wife instead. I have a feeling she has something to say to you. A beat of silence. What are you talking about? You'll find out soon enough. I ended the call just as Samantha stepped into the bedroom, wrapped in a towel, steam rolling off her. Who was that? She asked, frowning as she picked up her phone. I shrugged. Wrong number. She looked at the screen, her brow furrowing as she scrolled through her call history. Weird. I watched her closely as she dried her hair, moving around the room as though nothing had happened. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control again. The rage I'd carried since that morning I saw Matt's message had transformed into something sharper, something unstoppable. That afternoon, I got a text from Michelle. It's done. He knows. He's coming home to pack his things. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction before I turned back to my desk. Soon, Samantha would know too. The confrontation I had planned would be brutal. Not because I wanted to scream or fight, no, I was past that. It would be brutal because the truth would hit her like a sledgehammer, and there would be nowhere for her to hide. When Samantha came home that evening, she was still smiling, still acting like the woman I'd married. Dinner will be ready in 20, she said, slipping into the kitchen like it was any other day. I stayed seated, the divorce papers burning a hole in the desk drawer beside me. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, I'll end this. For now, I would let her bask in her ignorance for one more night. The next morning felt unnervingly normal. Samantha hummed softly in the kitchen, making her morning coffee. I sat at the dining table, staring at the newspaper I wasn't reading, feeling the weight of the truth in the air, truth she didn't yet know. My mind was sharp and steady, like the calm before a storm. She poured her coffee, grabbed her phone, and smiled at me. I might be late again tonight. We're finishing up a big project at work. Lies. Always lies. Take your time, I replied, my voice even. I'll get dinner for me and the kids. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. I let her. As she headed for the door, I followed her with my eyes, memorizing every detail, her confident stride, the way her hand brushed through her hair, the tiny smile she wore as if she hadn't just shattered the life we built. Love you, she called before shutting the door. I didn't answer. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my phone. Michelle had sent another message earlier that morning. Matt's out. He came clean about everything. I'm filing for divorce today. Let's burn their house of lies together. Michelle was fiery and relentless, qualities I admired now that she wasn't on the other side of this. I couldn't help but feel like I had an ally, someone who wanted justice just as much as I did. I grabbed the neatly stacked divorce papers from my desk drawer. My lawyer had pulled no punches, proof of infidelity, financial records, photos. Every damning piece of evidence was laid out so plainly that even the most sympathetic judge couldn't deny it. Samantha had nowhere to hide. That afternoon, I called in sick to work. There was no way I could focus, not today. Instead, I spent the day preparing for what would come next. The house was quiet, save for the low hum of the ceiling fan as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope with Samantha's name on it. The papers were heavy in my hands, heavy with consequence, heavy with finality. I thought about our kids, about the home we'd made. They didn't deserve any of this, but I refused to let them grow up in a household built on lies. I'd make sure they stayed with me. Samantha's selfishness would cost her everything, her marriage, her family, her reputation. The clock ticked slowly toward evening. I checked my phone. Samantha hadn't texted. It didn't matter. I knew she'd walk through the door eventually, carrying her secrets like dead weight. By 6:45 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. My heart beat slower than usual, as though preparing itself for the inevitable. I stayed seated at the table, the envelope in front of me, waiting. When the front door opened, Samantha stepped inside, her expression glowing with that same deceitful ease she always wore after being with him. She kicked off her shoes and smiled. "Hey, you. Kids upstairs?" she asked casually. "They're with your mom for the night," I replied without looking up. She paused in the doorway, her smile faltering. "Oh. Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at her then, really looked at her. "We need to talk." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Samantha shifted her weight, her smile disappearing entirely now. "Nathan, what's going on?" I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit down." For the first time in weeks, I saw something flicker in her expression, nervousness, maybe even fear. She hesitated, then sat. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice softer now. I slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." She looked at me, confused, before picking it up. As she pulled the papers from the envelope, her face paled. I watched the blood drain from her cheeks as her eyes scanned the first page. She didn't speak, couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she flipped to the next page, taking in the photos, the messages, the evidence that laid her betrayal bare. "You're filing for divorce?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes." Her head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. "Nathan, wait. This isn't what it looks like. Don't insult me, Sam." My voice was calm, deadly calm. "I know everything. The hotel. The texts. The calls. Matt. I spat his name like poison. "You've been lying to me for months." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I pressed on, the anger I'd buried for so long finally spilling over. "Every late night, every girls' weekend, every fake excuse, you thought I wouldn't notice? You thought you could play me for a fool?" I shook my head, disgusted. "I trusted you. I loved you. And you threw it all away for him. Nathan, please. Don't," I snapped, cutting her off. "Don't beg. Don't lie. It's done, Sam. You destroyed this." Her eyes filled with tears as she stared at me, the papers shaking in her hands. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was just so lost. Things between us weren't." "Don't you dare blame me for this," I said sharply. "Don't you dare. You had a choice. You could have talked to me. You could have worked on this. But instead, you snuck around like a coward." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing now. The sound was hollow, empty. I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. "What happens now?" she choked out. "You'll get served officially tomorrow. My lawyer's already filed everything. I'll be seeking full custody of the kids, and I'll keep the house. You can explain to everyone why you blew up your life over some guy who probably won't even stick around." Her head snapped up, eyes red and desperate. "Matt and he doesn't mean anything to me. That's your problem now, not mine." I stood, pushing the chair back. "Get your things and leave. You can sleep at a hotel tonight." "Nathan, no. Please, let's talk about this." I shook my head slowly. "There's nothing left to say." Samantha stayed rooted in the chair as I walked upstairs to our bedroom. I closed the door behind me and locked it, leaning back against the frame. From downstairs, I could hear her muffled sobs, the sound barely registering in my chest. I had spent so long mourning the loss of the woman I thought I'd married that now, I felt nothing. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the room we'd shared for years. The photos on the walls. The sheets we'd slept on. The life we'd built together. It all felt hollow now, like a house stripped of its foundation. The truth was, Samantha had been gone for a long time. The woman I loved had disappeared the moment she let Matt into her life. This stranger sitting in my kitchen was just wearing her face. After a while, I heard the front door close. I looked out the window and watched as Samantha climbed into her car and drove away. She didn't look back. I picked up my phone and sent a quick message to Michelle. "It's done. She knows." The reply came almost immediately. "Good. Let's finish this." I set the phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The storm was here, but I wasn't afraid of it. I had already survived the worst part, seeing the truth for what it was. And soon, Samantha would have to face the wreckage she left behind. The days following my confrontation with Samantha were quiet. Almost too quiet. She stayed at her sister's place, and we communicated only through short, clipped texts about the kids. The silence in the house felt unnatural, the kind of silence that comes when something's brewing just out of sight. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, an uneasy weight hung over me, a shadow I couldn't shake no matter how much I buried myself in work or spent time with Emma and Danny. They were resilient, kids always are, but even they could sense the shift. They asked about their mother in hesitant voices, as though afraid of the answers. "Mom's taking some time away," I told them. "She'll see you this weekend." They accepted the words, but I saw the confusion in their eyes, and it gnawed at me. They deserved better than this. That Friday afternoon, Samantha texted me. "Sam, I want to see the kids tonight. Can we talk? Please." I stared at the message for a long time, the cursor blinking as I hovered over the keyboard. The last thing I wanted was another pointless conversation, but part of me wondered if she'd finally accepted reality, if she was ready to face the consequences like an adult. Fine. Come by at 6. When the knock came at the door, I wasn't sure what to expect. Samantha stood there, looking small, her face pale and drawn. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. For a moment, I saw the woman I married, the one who wasn't weighed down by secrets and lies. "Come in," I said gruffly, stepping aside. The kids were upstairs, so we had the living room to ourselves. Samantha sat on the couch, fidgeting with her hands. I stayed standing, arms crossed, keeping a safe distance. "I wanted to talk to you before seeing the kids," she started, her voice soft and uneven. "Nathan, I've been thinking a lot about what I did. About how much I've hurt you." I said nothing, letting her fill the silence. "You're right. I was a coward. I made terrible choices, and I don't deserve your forgiveness." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. I couldn't. "Why are you here, Sam?" I finally asked, my voice flat. She looked up at me, and something about her expression made my stomach turn. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "I just wanted to see the kids. To hold them. To let them know I love them before." She stopped abruptly, as though catching herself. "Before what?" I asked sharply. She shook her head. "Nothing. I just want them to know how much they mean to me." Her words felt off, laced with a finality that made my chest tighten. I studied her closely, and it hit me then, this wasn't just guilt or remorse. It was something deeper, something darker. "You're not thinking about doing something stupid, are you?" I asked, my voice harder than I intended. Samantha looked away, tears streaming down her face now. I don't know how to live with myself, Nathan. I've ruined everything. The kids, you, my life, I don't see a way out of this. A cold dread gripped me. I stepped forward instinctively, my anger giving way to something I hadn't felt for her in weeks, concern. Samantha, don't say that. The kids need you. I need you to pull it together for them. She let out a shaky breath, nodding, though her eyes were still far away, locked somewhere I couldn't reach. Can I see them now? I hesitated for only a moment before calling the kids downstairs. They barreled into the room, shouting, "Mom," as they threw themselves into her arms. Samantha held them tightly, burying her face in their hair as though she could soak them into her skin. "I love you so much," she whispered over and over, her voice breaking. "I love you more than anything." I stood awkwardly by the door, watching the scene unfold with unease. Something still didn't feel right, but I didn't know what to do. Eventually, Samantha kissed both kids on the forehead and said softly, "Go play for a little while. I'll see you soon." Emma looked confused. "You're not staying, Mom." "I'll see you tomorrow, sweetheart," she said, forcing a smile. "I promise." Reluctantly, the kids trotted back upstairs, leaving us alone again. Samantha wiped her face and stood, grabbing her purse. "Thank you for letting me see them," she said quietly. "Sam," I started, unsure of what to say. She looked at me, her expression hollow. "Take care of them, Nathan. Be the father they need." Before I could respond, she turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing in the empty living room with a gnawing pit in my stomach. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Samantha's words echoed in my head, "I don't see a way out of this." I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it, but as the hours crept by, the unease grew into something I couldn't ignore. At midnight, my phone rang. The sound jolted me upright, and I snatched it off the nightstand. It was Samantha's sister. Her voice was panicked, trembling. "Nathan, oh God, have you seen Sam? She sent me this message. I think something's happened." "What message?" My blood ran cold. "I'm sorry. Tell the kids I love them." That's all it said. I've been calling her, but she's not answering. I don't know what to do. My heart pounded as I stumbled out of bed, my hands shaking. "I'll find her. Stay by the phone." I called Samantha over and over as I drove through the streets, searching for her car. I checked her sister's house, the kids' school, every spot I could think of where she might go. Nothing. Finally, I found her car parked at the overlook just outside town, a place we used to visit when we were first married, back when life was simple. The sight of it made my stomach drop. I pulled up behind her, headlights illuminating the empty driver's seat. I stepped out, the wind biting at my skin. "Sam." I called, my voice echoing into the night. No answer. That's when I saw her. Her body was crumpled on the ground near the edge of the overlook, her face pale in the moonlight. An empty pill bottle lay beside her, along with a crumpled note that fluttered in the wind. My knees gave out as I reached her, shaking her shoulders, calling her name. "Samantha. Sam, wake up. Please." She didn't move. Her skin was cold. I screamed into the darkness, the sound tearing through me like glass. The next few days were a blur. Police reports, funeral arrangements, broken explanations to the kids. I told them their mother was gone, that she loved them, but the words felt like dust in my mouth. At night, I sat in the living room alone, staring at the envelope of divorce papers on the table. They were meaningless now. Samantha was gone, and I was left with the pieces of a life that had crumbled beyond repair. I thought revenge would give me peace. I thought exposing her lies would make me feel whole again. Instead, it destroyed us both. And in the silence of the house, with the kids asleep upstairs, I wondered if this was my fault. If pushing her so hard, so relentlessly, had tipped her over the edge. I would never know. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, a weight I'd carry forever. In the end, no one really won.